I have the honor and the privilege of talking to an agency partner of ours at Federated Media. I'm particularly excited about it because we've met on and off throughout the years, but never really had a chance to have a proper conversation. So we're going to do it in front of you today. So I'd like to welcome to stage Amanda Richman, President, Digital Mediavest. Amanda? So, a lot to talk about today, but the thing that I read, which I'm particularly pleased, given I'm in the performance business as well, is that under your tenure, digital, no matter how you measure it, has doubled over the last few years. So whether it's billings, clients, et cetera, et cetera. How? Why? What? Two years, Digital Agency of the Year, 2009 and 2011?
I think we got the model right.
Okay.
And I think that kind of sums up why we've been able to grow so quickly.
Yeah.
At Mediavest, what we started with for digital was not actually siloing digital into a separate brand, a separate group, keeping that team at the arm's length, but instead integrate it from day one, recognizing that digital is going to be the future of the agency business. All marketing will be digital marketing. All conversations will be digital. And so we started just a client at a time, bringing in the right talent to infuse that thinking into each client team, to be there at the start of the conversations with the client and really help shape that all the way through. So I think doing that got us on a good lead track for how to think about digital and not have that awkward teen years where we're trying to then drive deeper integration by dismantling a digital group and reforming it within the structure itself. Instead, it could flow with really putting the consumer insights and that thinking at the start of the conversation.
So I noticed you didn't say advertising agency, and you said communications and marketing. Is that really kind of how you frame your work now for your clients? Is it's more communications and marketing versus advertising?
It's the description of an ad agency has completely evolved from not just looking at a channel and thinking of it as a buying organization or a media organization, more into communications and marketing. But I think now even that language is changing as we're talking more about experience development and design. And so you move from even just thinking of it as marketing channels into what can we be doing to solve a business channel, how do we design experiences that cross all channels, and particularly how data fuels all of that. And I think that's been the biggest challenge in the agency business, is the role that data plays and kind of the resources and the expertise that we need to put against that, because that is the heart of all of our consumer understanding.
So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we'll come back to this notion of partnership in a second, but this idea that consumer insights really fuels a lot of your decision making. But at the same time, you talk about human experiences. So are those two thoughts incongruous, or do they work well together? Are they partners? Are they in conflict?
They're bed partners.
Okay.
They work together. I guess it just depends on where they are in the journey itself. Agencies have always looked at consumer insights at the start of the planning process, and so that's fueled their product for years. It's kind of been at the heart, I think, of all agencies. A DNA is understanding the audience, understanding where to reach them, how to reach them, what to say to them. If we're on the creative side, now we have the opportunity through data to really understand that journey at every point, understand what's working and what's working in concert together. And so now this story of not just looking at a channel performance across what is television doing, how is print driving performance, what's the role of digital, but understanding how they're working together and what combinations is kind of the next challenge that we face. And I come more from a media agency background, which is also different than the creative conversations that are happening, and that still feels like another frontier for all of us, is to not just match the where we intersect with people and how we find them when they're receptive through data, but now what are we saying to them, and what stories are we forming and creating, and how are we getting them to share those stories as well. So this intersection of the creativity and the content is also coming closer to media again.
So again, that suggests that creativity, or what I know in my history to be kind of creative agencies versus media agencies being more data-driven, creative agencies now being equally data-driven if you're talking about these customer journeys and such, right? Is that, and we're going to use, we seemingly use data and consumer insights almost the same. Are they the same?
Not necessarily. There's nuances to it. You can have data, and I think as we We've heard a lot in 2011, even 2010, it was data is the new black. And what was really lacking, and I'll quote Wendy Millard on this, she said, actually, no, consumer insights is the new black. And it's taking the gems from data to understand the consumer and their experience, which isn't necessarily all data. It's what's the valuable data, and that's really the data that the marketers are looking for. Understanding how are people responding, what are they responding to, how do we drive more of that response or more of that awareness, whatever the objective of the campaign is. But it does require some different skill sets for agencies and for marketers as well, to understand how not to just store data and cleanse data and park it in a data mart, but then who are the people that are actually doing the analytics against that, what analytics actually matters, and then how do you take that all the way upstream into the planning process. And that's the loop that everyone's still working on, not just to have the performance and the results and let it be parked there, but then how do we keep refining that, and how do we refine that also in more of a real-time nature versus just looking at campaign optimization as kind of a one-and-done effort.
You talk a little bit about, through this customer journey, it's, and given that every minute more data is being created, and again, you've got this loop that you're talking a little bit about. To me, a term that comes up a lot in our conversations with brands is all about this notion of being always on, living in a real-time world. I mean, how does that affect running an agency? I mean, does that change the world you're living in as well?
It absolutely does. Agencies and certainly at SMG, we've had to migrate from this campaign thinking or annual plans or an upfront that has kind of a finite set of time and a linear process attached to that of the strategy, the planning, the buying, the reporting onto the next one, to this being a constant cycle, and a constant cycle that can happen in a matter of days as far as getting some results, optimizing against that, seeing what works. And then you layer that on everything that's happening in this space too, and the need to constantly be on top of what's next, whether that's new partners, new techniques, new approaches. It requires us to think differently even of our staffing models, and not look just at a team against a task or a team against a client, but how do we create more of our own open source, our own network of resources, the people we can pull in for problem solving and then move them on to another piece of business, or even look at partners, whether that's creative agencies or media partners, to play a part in this mix too, earlier on in the process, instead of just sticking to the box that they used to be put in.
Yeah. So there's the partnership word. I used it when I introduced you, and you've used it here in terms of creative agencies as well as media companies. Talk to me a little bit. I mean, Mediavest works with such blue chip clients as Procter & Gamble, Coke, Walmart, et cetera. I don't want to leave anybody out in that list, but talk to me a little bit about how you view partners, either media partners or kind of outside of the Mediavest Starcom family. I mean, what's the criteria? How do you think about partners? When do you bring in partners? How, just generally speaking.
Generally, partners is probably, for partnerships, is probably one of the most overused term in this business. And you have to define it in your own way as far as, is that really just a partnership around pricing and best pricing? That's kind of green fees, the way we look at it. For us, we try to define a partnership around each of our partners' assets and understand their strengths, and then how we match that against Starcom Mediavest gaps or opportunities that we could build something together. So the classic, media partnerships of best pricing, first look, that's standard. That comes with the territory.
Okay.
What we try to understand then is what are the upside opportunities where we can create something together. A big piece is data. So going back to the data conversation, understanding what data we might be able to share, or particularly what audience insights they have, and going deeper into their knowledge about their audiences, what motivates them. Could their audience, in essence, be a focus group for us? Are there opportunities for us to share data and insights across, not just about the target, the audience, but maybe about the marketplace in general, and get closer to that. And then there's this interesting space, too, now that I think more of us are exploring, just around products. And so what products might we create together? And whether it's productizing a solution or understanding what are some needs across multiple clients and roll that up to then work with a partner to say, let's build this together. And that's where typically they may bring in the technology chops and the engineers and talent.
So there's a bit of co-creation going on with
exactly
in media companies and
co-creation, and even in some instances, like our partnership with Google, education. So they have a platform they call Agency Land, now Agency Edge, and that's a training platform that we could then roll out globally in a way for us to then accelerate digital learning across all the markets and have it be sustainable education, but also something that's systematic so everyone has a foundation across the world. So that aspect too of understanding what they do best, you know, the platform and assets they already had as far as curriculum, now how could we make that work for us?
A word that jumps to mind this week amongst all weeks is this term social. What's Mediavest's point of view on social or even Facebook? I mean, what does social mean to you? It's obviously a huge data opportunity because you've got touching a lot of consumers, and consumers are touching a lot of things, conversations, et cetera. How would you define social as in the ecosystem of programs and products and services that you offer your clients?
It's been an evolved description. I mean, you think about it, all great marketing is social. All great marketing should spark a conversation, a dialogue, some shareability. I think for many of us where we started was much like when the question 10 years ago was what's digital and define digital, and every offsite, every summit started with that question, which then beget about 3 hours of debate. Social was at that same place too the last few years. And I think for many folks it started with the simple understanding of what's paid social, and kind of getting our hands around that with the opportunities, Facebook being a big push of that kind of dialogue to start with. Then it transferred into what about listening, and so from paid media into how do we understand, listen what the needs are, create more capabilities around that. That started to evolve then I think into more of a what's the experience and how can our consumers be co-creators with us. And now you see more dialogue again on content, and I would say search is back in the discussion too, just around search being a key to discovery of content, and how does social and search come together, and of course mobile and local are all inseparable too. So we're starting, I think, to see this social silo start to break down, much like the search silo broke down a few years ago, and hopefully mobile will in the future as well. And just realize that all marketing is social. Everything can spark a conversation, depending on the quality of content or the insights that we have with the consumer to hit them at the right time. And how can we be thinking outside of just a social budget or social spending as innovation, and just think of it as a pervasive layer that's across everything we do.
So I think you answered the question, but I'll ask you to answer it a different way. You mentioned content as it relates to social, and you even used the term conversation. Do you believe brands have a role in the conversation? Are they publishers, if you will, in your world or in your mind's eye in terms of either a social ecosystem or even just the web at large?
They absolutely can be, but I think the first starting point needs to be listening to understand is there a role that they can play, and not go to the conclusion that they're publishers and that all of their assets are actually worthy of a conversation. So by listening, by understanding, is there a gap in maybe the content or the solutions that people are looking for online? Can they fill that gap? What value do they provide? Is that value in an experience, in an application? Is it in content? In what form of content? That's the starting point. And I've seen more and more brands starting to look at how they could be part of the conversation, whether that's with partners or looking at their own assets differently, and maybe even marrying up different audiences too.
Is there, by the way, we're going to have a few minutes for questions for Amanda, so if you think about them, and we'll get mics to you quickly in a second. Is there a risk to social or to conversational media at this point for brands?
I think most brands are over that fear factor that they certainly had in, call it 2008, 2009. There was still quite a bit of resistance, I think, particularly for CPG marketers or those very conscious of controlling the message. And as they started to kind of let go and realize that the insights they could gather, the value of that, there's less of that sense of risk there. I think the risk for us still is to silo social, to look at it separately instead of being an always-on component of marketers. And I think there's a risk with some marketers too that still see, writing a check to Facebook is being social and checking the social box, and that's not the case. So being able to look more holistically across the marketplace at all content that they do, making it social, and thinking of all their partners as someone could help fuel that conversation as well.
Questions for Amanda? Do we have anybody? Who of your, I'm going to keep asking if you guys are going to be shy. I'm surprised by that, but
keep going away.
Well, there's one back there in the corner. I'm not sure where there's a mic. Who of your clients, brag a bit about some of your clients and some of the work they're doing. It seems like we've had Allison here from Coke tomorrow, and we've had some time with our friends in Cincinnati at Procter & Gamble, and we've had a lot of time to kind of understand the Mediavest family. Give me some examples of some of the good work that they're doing.
That's great. Tomorrow, I'm sure you'll hear quite a bit about the polar bears, the Super Bowl, or what some people are dubbing the Social Bowl. Great work by Coca-Cola in partnership with us and with others as well, to really think differently about social's role in the start of the campaign, and not just, I'm sure many marketers did this, releasing the spots early, but really having part of the conversation and thinking of what content appeals to people that could spark that. P&G has had tremendous advances as well, and I think, can't speak about it, but you're going to see some really interesting things this Olympics that Procter & Gamble and really Coca-Cola and many marketers are doing. I think the Olympics will be a really interesting touchstone on kind of that next ramp up of social, and how marketers are thinking about that is really the platform conversation, and to see how NBCU delivers against that as well, now that all the content is being streamed. So that will be one of those, I think, pivot points in the space. Turner's done some really interesting work when you look at TuneIn and building an audience around the show Dallas that they're going to be releasing soon. And what they did was use the timeline to basically tell the story of what happened since we last saw Dallas in, I guess, the 70s or 80s.
Yeah.
The who shot JR moment.
I was
in this room know.
this tall when that was happening. But.
Exactly. But they were looking at a way for that to really kind of fill in the conversations, the characters to tell their story, which is, I think, a really smart way to look at timeline.
Question back there?
Yeah, so Mediavest does a great job of keeping their finger on the pulse of technology and innovation in the digital space. It's a constantly evolving business you guys do all the time. What are some of the major hurdles that you're seeing from your brand partners when you turn around and when you hear these ideas and you start to present to them? Are they reluctant to change? What is that change that you see that they're reluctant to? Where are the biggest nightmares in your business when you turn around and hear what we have to say in this room to get an idea sold through?
Actually, there's probably two elements to that question. One of our nightmares is honestly how much press and buzz may happen around groups that really don't match back to the client's objectives or the role of media. So trying to keep the enthusiasm up, have us be testing and learning in this space, but not always chase the next shiny object, because that happens in this business, and you need to ground it in what's the role that company, that platform can play in the business, complementing other media, providing something that's above and beyond, not just chasing it and placing dollars there because Wall Street Journal or another article came across their desk the other day and it becomes the next thing. So grounding everything in kind of the here and now and what role can it play across the experience. The other piece, there still is challenges around measurement, and so I think that's a big topic this last few weeks too, particularly because of the television upfronts and a lot of the buzz between Google as well as AOL and Nielsen and Comscore around the GRP. And certainly there's a dialogue there about, is that kind of dumbing down the digital medium? But it may be at least a stepping stone to more fluid budgets happening, if there can be some level of understanding of how to plan and some simplicity around that. So I wouldn't say that's breaking the business down, but the measurement has needed some of those conversations to happen to, I think, bring clients' confidence up on spending and be able to look at holistic budgets and have more of that fluidity that we all look for.
Question over here.
Hi, my question's about mobile. And we've seen this week the revision of Facebook's S1 about the challenge of monetizing mobile and delivering ads on a small screen. What do you see as the future of advertising with mobile and monetization strategies?
Great question. We're seeing a lot around mobile, but particularly the tablet experience. And I think that's a conversation we're having more as well. It's not just framed under mobile or mobility, but a different experience on a phone device versus a tablet experience. And again, with the TV side of the world, there's a lot of discussion around social viewing now. So understanding what is the total experience with 2 screens, or often 3 screens in the same room, and trying to map that out. As far as the monetization and the revenue, I think many clients, many marketers are still testing and learning in this space, but we hope rapidly will evolve to mobility being an always-on strategy, and looking at every experience as being something that can be personal and portable, but what is the experience that we need to create that matches that mindset?
You talked a little bit about obviously social being dynamic and the risks of just writing that sort of blank check to Facebook. But as social continues to get disaggregated in a bigger way, we've seen obviously Pinterest come on here strong. Is it just safer for most to just write that check to Facebook because I sort of know what my ROI is to some extent, and I don't know what it is in some of these 4 or 5 other areas? I mean, how do you talk to clients about that, and how are you thinking about that? Is that sort of 5 years out, maybe we'll have 3 or 4 big players, and you just write those checks? I mean, how are you kind of thinking of the social world in that context?
Yeah, the reality is Facebook does offer the scale. For most marketers, they are looking for big scale plays, and an audience size of that is tremendous and very powerful. I think what we've yet to realize is some of the true insights and potential with their data. And I think for probably the right reasons around privacy, they haven't maybe gone to the extent that I think marketers would like to see more around the ROI and the results, but that will get there in time. I think the challenge is how do we look beyond just a scale play and understand what are the engaging experiences we can create, and where can those be shareable, and what are the partners kind of funnel into that mix. And as Facebook is bringing on more content partnerships as well, it's certainly an interesting environment for marketers to start to innovate as well beyond what they have been doing with just marketplace ads.
Begin the conversation around partnerships and social, and now we're gonna wrap up here. Thank you, Amanda.
So thank you, Dan.
Good fun. Thanks for the contribution from the audience.